Warrington Borough Council hates the homeless. So just to make it clear what is happening here, obviously I am in my tent still. The tent situation was the charity shop that I sourced this tent from neglected to mention that the tent didn't come with poles nor the rain top. So the reason that it is claustrophobic, more so now because we have a rain top finally, is because it is strung up to trees with paracord. We had a downpour, a torrential downpour of rain in Warrington yesterday. And thankfully, a rain top that I had ordered had just managed to arrive at my friend's house, and we literally managed to set it up just as the downpour started. Which, again, the rain top is also set up with paracord, the remaining paracord that I had. So there are pools of rainwater in this corner, and in that corner. Thankfully, they're not in that corner, which is where I keep my clothes. So, thankfully, they ended up being all right. But in particular, the reason I was wanting to make this video is simply for the fact that now that I am on the other side of Warrington Borough Council's assistance that they offer for the homeless, I was absolutely appalled in having to deal with it, and especially how they dealt with myself. However, one of my biggest issues that I had with them isn't even something that I take offense for of my own accord. It affected me, which is why I'm aware of it. But I feel worse for the other human beings that have to go through this, and particularly the families, which I have seen along my journey 3 months thus far. That literally some of them have newborn children, and the way that Warrington Borough Council and the D.W.P as well deals with these people is absolutely astonishing, absolutely atrocious. And I will be getting to specifically the D.W.P part in the latter part of the video, which will be the bigger issue in my eyes, though that's the issue that doesn't necessarily affect me as much. So Warrington Borough Council, the place where I was born and raised, we have, at least in 2018, when I was last able to find some figures, we had the 6th highest population of homeless residents in the entire country, or in the entirety of England at least, and that had doubled and then tripled in the years previous. And from what I have seen now from being homeless, we're probably higher than the 6th. We're probably, if not, then at least our homeless population is probably quadrupled by the time we've reached this year, especially since the COVID decided to grace us with its presence a couple of years ago. And I'm talking that when I was in emergency accommodation, and so as I say, I've been in this tent for 3 weeks, but before that, previous to that, I'd been in emergency accommodation at a hotel in town, which, all due credit to Warrington Borough Council, they were paying for while I was there. However, it was given to me through a charity called Shelter, which is a really good charity. I've had other friends that have either been homeless, on the verge of being homeless, or have been about to be evicted illegally, effectively. And Shelter offers free legal advice. They will sort you out with accommodation, such as getting me the hotel, completely free of charge. Like, they're a really good charity, And so I had been in one of the hotels that accepts the homeless in Warrington Town Centre for 2 months on the dot, and there's a very specific reason for that. Contractually, there's a very specific reason for that. And the situation was, when I was placed in the hotel, you are given a contract to sign through Housing Plus, which is Warrington Borough Council's company, or whatever you want to put it, that effectively deals with the homeless and deals with other people that wish to get houses. And that specific contract states that they can put you up for 2 months in emergency accommodation, such as the hotel that myself and a lot of other people ended up being at. But then, once that 2 months is up, there is a clause that says that they can put you up for another 56 days under emergency conditions, such as, they aren't able to find you a house, or you're under the threat of violence. And my contract ended 2 months to the day when I first got it, because the housing officer that I was assigned, who, for data protection laws, I again can't say his first and last name. His first name is Liam, and his last name, I'll just call him Liam Gash. I don't know if you guys ever read The Beano as a child. Dennis the Menace had that little dog, Nasha, GN. And he was my housing officer. And basically, as soon as the 2 months that the Warrington Borough Council is allowed to give you, if you will, as soon as that has run out, if that were to start going into the emergency section of that contract, those 56 days, that will officially look really bad on your housing officer, because he has not effectively churned out the homeless people. He has not effectively just been a cog in the system as he is supposed to be, and just processed them in whatever way he needs to get it done. And Liam Gash, he said to me on the first day when I went to see them, my first day of being homeless, sorry, correction, actually, no, Shelter got me the weekend, the first weekend, because Housing Plus was shut for the weekend, obviously. So I had to go and see them, and he told me, when I asked him if I could have the address at the hotel, if I could have a copy of it, so that should the Paluche need to send me any documents, which of course they didn't in that 2 months time span because they're lazy bastards, I could have them forwarded to somewhere where I could then receive them. And he specifically told me, oh no, don't get comfortable, you're not going to be there longer than a few days, we're going to send you to this other place. And we'll get to where the other place is, but anybody who lives in Warrington that knows that this place knows it's nowhere that anybody wants to go, whether it's by choice or by circumstance. But yeah, he refused to allow me to use or to provide me the address of the hotel, because he didn't want me to get comfortable there. Like, this guy, you can already tell, like, he's dead behind the eyes from what he's, the people that he's having to deal with. Like, he really doesn't care. And I had countless other people that I'd had conversations with reiterate that he was just the worst housing officer. But I guarantee you he stayed on board because he's not there to effectively provide you with assistance. He is there to just churn the homeless people out so that Warrington Borough Council can officially keep their numbers down. And as I say, Warrington was, and I assume still is, the 6th worst county in the entire country for their homeless population. But of course, Warrington Borough Council themselves have also come out and said that it isn't an issue. They don't have a homeless issue at all. They completely deny that fact. Yet statistically, that is the fact, that is the absolute fact of it. So Liam Gash, of course, decided to process my homeless application only 5 days before that 2 month period was up, because again, he's obviously realized as well, like, oh, I can't have this going into the emergency part of the contract, because then that looks bad on him for having to continue to make Warrington Borough Council effectively pay for a roof to be kept over my own head and however many other people's head. And again, as he told me not to get comfortable, and I've seen them arriving at the hotel where I was at, where they effectively say to the hotel staff, like, look, is there anybody that needs to go, any troublemakers, blah, blah, blah. And obviously, Mr. Gash thought I was going to be one of those people. And as the hotel staff, like the manager especially, would say, like, I made good friends with the majority of the staff. Like, I addressed them all as sir, didn't break any of the rules, was always back on time. Even got a nice little thing when I left, of like some chocolates and some fudge, just to say thank you for the hospitality. But while I was waiting for my homeless application to be processed, I called up the Housing Plus people and said to them, like, you know, it's been a while now. Has my application been processed? Like, whereabouts is it in the process? And this really speaks to Warrington Borough Council's staff that they have dealing with the homeless people. The woman that I spoke to on the phone, and I don't want to ascribe to her something she hasn't said word for word. She basically reiterated that, oh no, we will be processing it as soon as possible because we don't want to have to keep paying for you. Oh, I mean, we want you to have a roof over your head. And that's, I mean, slip of the tongue, but I mean, a bad slip of the tongue there. Effectively, again, it's all a money thing for them. It's all a money thing for them. They don't care. They don't care where you are, where you have to go, just as long as you are out of the system. And not in a good way, as you'll find out, not in a way that's looking out for your best interests at all. So they processed my homeless application about 5 days before the 2 month contract ended. Obviously, because they've realized that I'm effectively being backdated here, and if I cross into that 56-day period, they're going to be able to be chastised for that, for effectively Warrington Borough Council could get on them and say, why are we still having to pay for these people? We don't want to be paying for these people to have a roof over their head. So this Liam Gash in that 5-day period had me fill out countless forms. I had to like go and get 3 months worth of personal bank statements, which I don't really believe they should be allowed to be asking for, but whatever. I did it. Um, they've given me so many other forms as well, and I had to like fill out things about my mental health and issues, why I was homeless, what kind of property I would need, and obviously the entire profession that this man has is to assist you in helping you find a suitable accommodation for yourself. And again, I had to stay on the phone for like hours just to get letters just to say about benefits that I was entitled to and exactly what I was entitled to, so that they could process how much you can pay in rent theoretically. And it was so much busy work that I was given on his behalf in these last 5 days that, as those of you who saw the first video about the Peluche know, I so needed that time to do other things. Like I wouldn't even have the mental energy, the physical strength to do some of these things sometimes. Like I was getting so dicked around and having to literally just run into stone walls that the Peluche was throwing up, though they had no legal right to do so. So I filled out on my forms about my mental health condition, and not that I would ever wish to have to speak about this publicly. But in 2008, I was diagnosed with schizotypal personality disorder, which isn't schizophrenia just because it has schizo at the beginning of it. And like I used to have to see child psychiatrists when I was like really young. And that was before it was kind of like the thing for people to do. Because I know it sounds strange to say, but there legitimately was a phase where everybody and their grandmother and their fucking pet dog was seeing psychiatrists because it was that wave. So as getting attention to oneself or sympathy or empathy or whatever, everybody ended up being, especially teenagers with like the emo phase that came and like everybody was bipolar or all this, all that. But you were still shunned as a child if you were seeing psychiatrists when I was young. But it was what was effectively necessary, is what was needed to do. And because of having schizotypal personality disorder, I mean, it's hard enough to even just try and express myself to anybody, literally anybody. But the reason that like I can't just go into like a house share or just even just again, this is just even like express myself to people, is that I just mentally, my brain just changes the way that it works when I'm around other human beings. Like I'm sure it's a protection thing, I don't know. But for me, the way that I've always kind of addressed it was that I have to spend so much time alone, like with my own thoughts, with myself, which is no issue for me. Like I like that. But I have to effectively I have to know who I am, like really deeply, really specifically, and effectively I can have those things built up so that when I am around people, it's like putting in a video or a DVD and I can just press play on it, and my actual brain can just kind of take a backseat, a safe backseat, and just allow a cultivated personality of myself, a fragment of myself, to effectively just be projected onto the world, and that will be the me that people know. But if I spend too much time around people, it's even like when I used to work in a call center like years and years ago, it was just having to be, even just being around people and then being on the phone to people like all day, every day, like it broke me internally, like literally broke me. My brain just, it runs out of energy, or it runs out of fragments. Like I can't keep drawing from that pool, because that pool needs to be sustained, it needs to be filled, and I can only do that when I'm by myself, truly by myself, alone. Like I don't have Facebook, I don't have Instagram, I don't do social media. I never even wanted to do this, but unfortunately it was more important to me at this point in my life to actually expose the Peluche, and in this case Warrington Borough Council, for the kind of human beings that they are. Because I mean, I have nothing to lose here. I mean, look where I'm living. As I say, like I'm literally surrounded by rainwater. Like this isn't I mean, it's strange to do, but it is what I see as my calling in life now. Um, so on these forms as well, I've written about my mental health, and I had my doctors, of course, get in contact with them, because I know my word for it alone isn't necessarily going to be worth anything to them. My doctor's stressed to the Housing Plus people, like he does have this condition, like, and he can't just be around other human beings the way that you would think most other people could be. Like it really does affect him in a certain way. and they Housing Plus just and the Under One Roof scheme, which is the organization that works with Housing Plus to actually they'll show you the houses that are available or not available, because I literally never even saw one house, because apparently you can only pick 4 areas, and then if none of those areas have council houses, you pretty much have to resubmit your application with another 4 areas. And yeah, so that was an absolute joke to have to deal with, because again, it's just like how do you expect people to, if we don't even have like an open view of what's available, where's available, we're literally just supposed to guess where we hope some houses will be available. And it's not to the point where it's like you just list a specific part of the borough. Like I ended up inquiring, saying like, why am I never finding any houses in any of the areas that are listed? And they've ended up saying, oh, they've even split like literally some things that are a combination of like 4 or 5 streets. I've had to split that into lower, middle, and upper, as in like lower street, upper street, middle street. And then the fact that you can only have access to 4 places, you're literally just taking a guess of where there's going to be a council house available. It's absolutely ridiculous. I even had to put down on my forms to Mr. Gash some of the assistance that I would need alongside. Oh, and just to be clear as well, so when my doctors got in contact and said all of this, of course, Housing Plus never got back to my doctors about it. They didn't care. But Housing Plus and Under One Roof collectively decided that basically everything that my doctor was saying was just null and void, wasn't going to be taken on board, wasn't going to be acknowledged. Which is nice to know that Warrington Borough Council and their employees, their housing employees, officially think that they know better and are more qualified than medical professionals who have known me and have access to my entire medical record for my entire life. But it doesn't matter what a professional doctor says. This person has needs. This person has, even if you're in a wheelchair, this person like needs a ramp. Warrington Borough Council can just say, nah, I don't think they need the ramp. I mean, they could just kind of like fall into the front door and just kind of hoof themselves over to the kitchen or something. So I also said, because of the incident for which I was arrested, because of what happened at my house, then there is a potential that the housing situation could be resolved if I were to receive some assistance with domestic abuse. And once again, that's just never been acknowledged by the guy. I put down the mental condition, the fact that I can't be around people, supported by doctors, the fact that I would need help with domestic abuse if that was potentially going to be anything. I would need to have certain amenities close to me, such as like a psychiatrist if I needed to see them or speak to somebody. And just none of that has even been acknowledged or taken on board by this guy. It's literally as if I'd have just given him the equivalent of a blank sheet of paper and just said, you decide, you just decide. So yeah, again, the pointless busy work that he was giving me, but again, that way he can also just say, oh, well, he did fill out the forms, blah, 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 but he's not taking any of what I put on those forms into consideration. There was no point in me doing it. There was no point at all. I feel like there was one other thing that was on here, but I've crossed this out, and I feel like there was one specific point which I'm missing out here. I may have to come back to that. You'll have to forgive me. This is actually, I was going to point out just to yourselves, the way that the condition effectively affects me was just being in the hotel while I was in there. Like, my physical health got so bad just for the fact that, like, I could hear other people in the hallways and, like, people slamming their doors at 2 a.m. And because this hotel, though it didn't make it public knowledge, they effectively served as a hostel for the homeless as well, for emergency accommodation. And so, like, there were spice heads, there were crackheads, there were like violent people that were in there, loud fucking people as well. And like, you'd have people slamming their doors at 2 a.m. when you have to be out at 10 a.m. For 3 hours because the housemaids need to not have the potentially violent homeless guests in the hotel while they go in and clean the rooms. Like, that's how potentially bad it's also been. And like, I saw everything at that hotel. Like, specifically the room that I was in, you had people downstairs throwing glass bottles at each other, like God knows what hour in the morning. It wasn't a nice place. Again, the staff were all nice. They were lovely to me. I very much, as I say, I was very thankful for their hospitality. But so the place that Mr. Gash originally said that they were going to send me was this place in town called James Lee House, which, again, if you ask anybody in Warrington about that, they'll immediately just that they will grimace. Like it's that badly known. Like the reputation for it is awful. Even the security guard who worked at the hotel, like I overheard him getting into like so many scraps and verbal arguments with people at the hotel, and he's even said to me when we were conversing, like he wouldn't even walk past that place because he's made so many enemies that have been moved from the hotel onto there. Like this hotel effectively served as a halfway house for James Lee House, provided the housing association couldn't actually get you accommodation. Um, And so, even though I'd stated all of these things to him, they decided to send me to James Lee anyway. And to give you an idea of James Lee, it is effectively a house for the homeless, for violent drug addicts, for pedophiles, and for rapists. Like, I've known somebody in the past who has stayed there, and he's even informed me that colloquially amongst James Lee House, there is a floor that's known as the nonce floor, where they will purposely put all of the pedophiles together to try and keep them from getting into fights with the other residents. And as far as my condition goes, James Lee House is a communal kitchen, a communal lounge, and a communal bathroom, which again is just, I couldn't even deal with people being in the hallways, and it's not by choice that that happens. And as I said, my physical health, I know it's disgusting, but I got the stress shits so badly when I was staying in that hotel. I was in physical pain every single night over it. Just because it's not something that I choose to do. It would just be how it just processed everything in my head. Again, good luck getting me to explain that to you. It's the rare human being I can genuinely open up to. And so this is why Mr. Gash originally told me not to get comfortable, because I'd be going to James Lee within a few days. I then ended up staying at the hotel for 2 months because even though Mr. Gash obviously presumed I was going to be a dickhead or something, the hotel staff have completely had my back the entire time. Like they've never once said a bad word about me. It was so much so that the manager, when I left the last time I spoke to him, and I informed him that if they're offering me James Lee, or they were offering me James Lee, I'm literally going to go and camp out in a tent. He said to me, right, you know, if there's anything that I can do for you, do let me know. And obviously I'm not going to impose on a guy like that, but like that's how close I actually became to some of the staff there at the hotel. But so as I was offered James Lee House, the situation, and for my mental health and evidently my physical health, was going to be so bad. As I say, I don't even want to use the word chose, because this isn't a life I would ever choose, but I had to choose the tent over staying at James Lee House. It wasn't going to work. I would have just nosedived mentally, physically. Like I simply couldn't have done it. And this is why, thankfully, because I had those 2 months, I took the initiative to make sure that for when this time eventually came, should it come, I would be as well prepared as I could. So as I said, I sourced a tent from a charity shop, I got paracord, I got myself tools, pots and pans, anything else that I would need. I scouted out my location, which I originally had to change because as we had that torrential downpour yesterday, I realised that where I was originally going to go and camp out by the River Mersey, that if it had rained the way it would yesterday, the tent would have been flooded, and not flooded like there's pools of rainwater. It literally would have been lifted up by the River Mersey and carried right down to Runcorn, a couple of kilometres, right back to the Paluche station. And so I even said to Liam Gash that so the law, and I assume it's the law technically, but I know that this is the way that it works, that effectively if you're under the threat of violence at somewhere such as James Lee House, you can't be forced to go there legally, because you're in danger, and it's not right for Warrington Borough Council to do that. And while I was staying at this hotel, because of where my room was situated, as I say, it was above where everybody would like go out and smoke weed and everything, so I got to hear a lot of conversations, a lot of fights, a lot of arguments, the police arriving at least once every week to arrest somebody. I'd actually overheard somebody speaking to somebody else, and they were threatening to bang me out. And obviously, whether that little pissant could have actually managed to do that is a different story. But some of my friends, they call me by a nickname, which is one of my middle names, and it's a very distinguishable name. Like you wouldn't mistake it for any other name. And I heard it very clearly. This person threatening me and discussing it, and I've mentioned that to Liam Gash and said to him, amongst other things, when they finally said to me, right, it's going to be James Lee House for you tomorrow, I sent him an email. I don't know how you can expect me to go there after everything that I wrote down on those forms for mental health. my conditions and the fact that I have actually been threatened. Like, I am literally under the threat of violence if I were to go to James Lee. Because as I say, it's a halfway house, and there's absolutely no way that this person who had threatened me hadn't been moved on to James Lee. Because I don't think I ever saw them again. I never heard them again because, of course, they've been such a dickhead just in the hotel in general that the staff have been like, yeah, no, this person needs to go. And where will they have gone? The same place that Liam Gash thinks it's appropriate to stick anyone and everyone, James Lee House. And yeah, it's been 3 weeks to the day since I've been officially out of that hotel. And I just still haven't heard anything back about that email because, of course, Liam Gash offered me James Lee House. He has officially, legally fulfilled his obligation to rehouse me. It doesn't matter about the fact that, as I said, I wrote him, I have the mental health issues. My doctors are supporting this. I need help with domestic abuse. I'm literally being threatened. That's just, even though there are so many extenuating circumstances, and these are people that are supposed to help you and assist you if you have such circumstances as mental health issues that would prevent you from staying in such a place at James Lee House. That's, again, it's just meant nothing to him. And I have never even heard back about the fact that I am under the threat of violence if I were to go to that, if I were to go to James Lee House. Because again, he has technically, just on a technicality, gotten out the second before extenuating circumstances have come into effect. Not that I wasn't threatened long before James Lee was offered to me, but I just didn't make an issue. I didn't make a deal of it because I never saw the guy again. And just to be clear, I'd literally never even spoken to this guy because again, I'm not one for making big conversations with a lot of people. But usually people see me, and if they see me for so long, as people at the hotel did, they eventually start asking me my name, inquiring about me, which is why I gave them my nickname instead, because I don't want these people knowing who I really am. And that's effectively been it as far as Warrington Borough Council treating me as a homeless person is gone. They've not fulfilled any of their legal obligation to the point where now I'm living in a tent. They didn't care about any of the circumstances, mental health, threat of violence. I was never even questioned. There was never even concerned about any of the circumstances. As I say, I was just another number for them to just push out, for them to just process, for them to not have to pay for. Oh, sorry, we want you to have a roof over your head. We just don't want to pay for it. And I get that. I'm not saying that I deserve handouts or anything. Like, nobody's proud to be on benefits or have to be relying on the system like that. But I mean, again, the fact that as a homeless person, and say it wasn't me, say it was one of these families that are homeless that have, as I've even seen at the hotel, newborn infants with them, to have somebody who is supposed to be helping you, assisting you while you're homeless, say to you, oh, well, don't get comfortable because you're not going to be there very long. Like, as if that's something that you're going to say to another human being. And so moving on to the second point, and this is the one that I'm saying this also personally affected me really badly, but I am more concerned by, as I say, those families that have those small children. When I first became homeless, I thought to myself, right, I'm going to need any assistance from the government that I can get. And I already receive employment and support allowance for the schizotypal personality disorder. Nothing I'm proud of, but I've not been able to cultivate a job for myself where I'm able to effectively replicate the assistance that I get from the government in a stable manner, which would then basically just completely replace what I would need to be reliant on. So I called up the PIP people, which is personal independence payment, which is something that also disabled people can get, or people with mental health conditions. And I spoke to somebody called Callum, as I found out, and this complete cunt, this asshole, while I was doing the 15-minute assessment to get the form sent out to me, they obviously have to ask whatever questions it was that they do. And I had to say to him, right, the forms can be sent, because I'm homeless right now, I need the forms sent to my home address. But obviously I cannot go to that address because of bail conditions, but I can still receive mail there. Like, a family member brings it to me. And that's perfectly legal, as I found out, again, from a woman I spoke to after this. It is perfectly legal for that to be the case. As long as you have an address that you can receive mail, that's perfectly fine with the Department for Work and Pensions. That is considerable as an address that you're effectively residing at, or whatever you want to put it. And this guy instead, after this 15-minute assessment, instead of actually sending the PIP forms out to me, which he never did, he instead went behind my back and got my ESA cancelled, and then didn't say a word to me on the phone about it, knowing full well what he was going to do. And I'm sure that this was a really proud moment for him. Like, I'm sure he was laughing all the way home. And so I only found out on the day when I was expecting to receive my ESA. I had 17p in my bank account. And obviously the money that I was receiving was to feed myself during the day, to get more paracord, get a tent if need be. And I only found out on the morning when I was expecting to be paid that I in fact hadn't been paid. And that was it. I hadn't been told about that. I hadn't been warned about that. He just left me to discover that on the day I was expecting to receive the money. And as I say, I immediately called up the ESA people and inquired about what was happening. And this is when the woman specifically said to me, well, do you have an address that you can use? And I said, well, yes. As I said to the guy on the phone, Cunty Callum, I do still have this address that I can use. I just, because of bail conditions, cannot go to that address right now. So, of course, she had my ESA reinstated within the hour, because it was absolutely illegal for Cunty Callum to do this to me. But simply for the fact that he's done this, I mean, imagine, and this is what I'm saying, imagine if it was one of the homeless families that literally has a newborn infant, or just a young child, and they are reliant, for whatever reason, on assistance from the government to be able to feed themselves. And some dickhead who works for the D.W.P, who is supposed to be sending you out PIP forms, instead never sends them out, just never sends them out at all, but instead goes behind your back and has what little money you're going to be receiving completely cancelled and doesn't tell you. So on the day that you wake up expecting to be able to feed your family, to feed your children, you find out then that you don't actually have any money. You have no money to do such things. And imagine if they don't have the wherewithal, or don't even know who to call to actually get it reinstated, or to put their point across, or say they're not even able to get it reinstated for some reason. And that this person who was supposed to be helping the disabled, helping the homeless, has instead decided to treat them as if they are scum, as if they are nothing. I'm sure it was such a proud moment for him, and I hope his mother is really fucking proud. So thankfully I managed to. The very nice woman that I dealt with from ESA, she managed to get it reinstated within the hour, and God bless her for it. That really put my mind at ease. But then you're supposed to receive your PIP forms within 2 weeks, and it'd been a month, and I still hadn't received anything. So of course I called up to inquire about exactly where these forms were, when should I be expecting them, when were they sent out. And so when I finally spoke to the woman, and I also asked her who was the name of the person I spoke to last time, because I obviously want to lodge a complaint about them. She takes me through these security questions, and the second that she finally gets access to my D.W.P file or the log, and she's seen the comment that the ESA woman who has reinstated my benefits has written, and I don't know what that is, but she's clearly written something chastising what Cunty Callum had done to me. The second that she gets through these security questions, she just takes a few seconds to read something, doesn't tell me what it is, and then just says that she'll be right back. She just needs to go and speak to her supervisor. So she speaks to her supervisor for a minute or two, comes back, tells me that it tells me that it was Cunty Callum that I spoke with. Tells me that she can't tell me when the forms were sent out or processed. I would need to call the PIP inquiry line to find that out. And she also says that if I wish to lodge a complaint, I have to do it with the inquiry line that she gives me the number to as well. So she just completely gets me off the phone, did her due diligence, oh yeah. And I spent 40 minutes on hold waiting to speak to the PIP inquiry line this time. And when I finally get there, when I asked the woman when my forms had been processed, wouldn't you know it, just as I got off the phone with that last woman, after a fucking month, just as I got off the phone with that last woman, during that 40-minute wait when I've been waiting to speak to this woman on the inquiry line, my forms have just so happened to get processed during that 40-minute wait, after a month. And after she just has to go and speak to her supervisor about something, just something. And so I kept on asking this woman that I was speaking to on the inquiry line, and she just kept on saying back to me, who's Callum? Who's Callum? I was saying to her, it's one of your fucking colleagues. Is there not a log of every time I call up where you guys put in whatever's been talked about, discussed, whatever? So where you've been able to tell me that my forms have magically been processed in the past 40 minutes? That's Callum. Who's Callum? That's Callum. your fucking colleague. And it turns out when I said to her, right, I want to lodge a complaint here as well, because this is where the last person I spoke to told me I could complain. The woman that I was speaking to on the inquiry line then said, oh, no, you can't complain on this line. If you want to lodge a complaint, when you finally get your PIP forms that were magically just processed while I was on hold, I can stick a complaint in with my PIP forms, and that can get sent out and dealt with then. And so I finally received my PIP forms, filled them all in, sent them off on the 18th of August. 20 days later, I called to just to make sure they have actually been received along with the complaint form. And wouldn't you know it, 20 days later, the PIP forms confirmed have not been accepted by the D.W.P. Likewise, so the complaint letter has also not been accepted by the D.W.P. And call me a cynic, call me an absolute cynic, but I just have a feeling that those forms have actually been received, and right now they're residing in a recycling bin somewhere, simply for the fact that they don't want to have to deal with the complaint, the severity of the fucking complaint, because that was breaking the law what Cunty Callan did to me. And again, lying to me about who I can complain to. Oh, I can't complain to them. Oh, but then I can't complain to the people I was told I can't complain to either. Chances are that's just in a bin. That is rotting in a landfill somewhere now. Or it's, I don't know, it's probably the wrapper for this water bottle if it's been recycled. And again, so my PIP forms haven't been accepted, which means I now have to reapply for all that again. I'll now have to write the complaint form again. And thankfully, I took a picture of it because it was a good complaint letter. I might stick it on the end of this video. And that's it. That's been my entire experience as a homeless person. I've had nothing but the utmost disrespect shown to me, and just absolute hatred displayed toward me. Such terrible behavior. On my last day when I was staying at the hotel, I had the privilege of seeing this new couple that had just arrived there. And they had, as I was saying, they had a newborn infant called Phoenix, which I hope they don't mind me saying. And in my eyes, to think that whilst they were in what is probably the worst situation most people could ever be in their entire lives, they're homeless, and they have an infant child on them. And then to think that there is somebody out there who is supposed to be helping and assisting the disabled, the PIP people, that will instead go behind your back to get your benefits, what little money you already have coming in, cancelled, and won't even say a word to you, and leave you to find that out on the day that you're expecting to be paid, on the day that you're expecting to feed your family, is so abhorrent. It is so evil. It is pure evil. And I guarantee, as I say, I guarantee that complaint letter's in the bin, because they're never going to want to have to acknowledge that one of their own employees did that. The fact that's how Warrington Borough Council see the homeless, and that's how the D.W.P see the disabled. It's sickening. It's absolutely sickening. Honestly, the most vulnerable in society, at their worst situation, that nobody should ever have to be in their entire lives. Like, this isn't nice. Imagine if it was just even more than one person here. It'd be so cramped, and one of us would have to be sleeping in the pools of water. But this is a life I effectively had to say it was okay for myself, because otherwise my mental health just would have hit rock bottom. Like, I'm not saying I would have done anything stupid, killed myself or anything, but I mean, I will say those stress shits I was talking about, funnily enough, this is just to speak to my mental and physical health. When I did start camping out, they cleared up immediately, just because I wasn't around people all the time. But this is how Warrington Borough Council treat the homeless, like nothing more than matchsticks that just need to be burnt and extinguished as quickly as possible, so that the person who's supposed to be working, helping and assisting them can't get chastised by the government, because the government is having to pay for a few more days maybe, just to make sure that somebody or some people or some children have a roof over their head. And the D.W.P, likewise, making it a point of personal interest, making it a point of pride, a point of honour to themselves, to purposely go and screw over the most vulnerable people that this society is supposed to be helping and protecting. It's absolutely sickening. It's absolutely fucking sickening.